All right, rule number 3 of the 5 essential rules of tantrum hacking. Really, this should be like rule number 2.2, because this is what you do if rule number 2 is not working for you right away. And this rule number 3 is a little bit controversial. This is what got me famous on TikTok. I made a video about hijacking the tantrum, which is what I call rule number 3. And yeah, a ton of people used it and it works. I mean, there's no doubt that it works. Other people, because they didn't have the whole scope of, hey, look, this is the steps that I go through, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. A lot of people said, no, you should really be doing step 2. You shouldn't be on step 3. But here's the truth, guys. If you try step 2 and earnestly try, don't just skip to step 3, because step 3 is a little bit of a nuclear option. If you do this too much, it loses efficacy. It's not going to work as well. I shouldn't say it's a nuclear option. I should say it's like antibiotics, right? If you take antibiotics too many times, they lose their effectiveness. You have to take more. And actually it can create super bacterial infections in you. It's like, it can create a much worse situation, super bugs. The same thing is true with hijacking the tantrum. If you do this too much, if you don't rely on step 2, which is really the kind of bread and butter of this whole thing, if you don't rely on working through your kids' tantrum by listening reflectively to them and observing and getting on their level and all this stuff, if you just immediately jump to rule number 3, it's gonna work the first couple times and then it's gonna stop working. But this is what you do when there is a circumstance where either, hey, look, I really need to get my kid out of a tantrum. We are in a wedding right now. My kid is the ring bearer and needs to go up there, which, by the way, don't use kids in events and weddings. It's terrible. But if you did it anyway, if you didn't listen to my advice and you used your kid in a wedding, or you let your kid be in a wedding and they're about like meltdown, yeah, this is what you use, tantrum, hijacking the tantrum. So this is how this works. So we've kind of established in rules 1 and 2 what's going on in their brain. So their prefrontal cortex offline, their limbic system, their amygdala, their lizard brain is driving the whole ship. Here's the thing. You can just kind of bypass and forcibly put their prefrontal cortex back in the driver's seat of their brain with a couple of techniques. And there are moments when, if your kid is unable for you to do rule 2 with them, if they're so escalated by something that happened, if they're triggered by a traumatic event from their past, or if they got hurt, and you need to make sure that they're actually okay. There are times when you can't work through rule 2 with your kid because they're just not having it. They are just so far gone. They're so far past that, the fire is raging out of control already. This is when you do this. So basically, the way that you forcibly put their prefrontal cortex back in the driver's seat, again, so that you can move back to step 2, not so that you can just skip step 2, is you start giving them executive functioning tasks. And an executive functioning task is basically anything that your kid can do that you can't train a lizard to do. So touch your nose, right? This is something that can't, like that's a proprioception technique, but other animals can kind of learn how to do this, but they don't understand the verbalization to do this. So giving your kid an executive function, touch your nose. Or another great one, the one that I made a video about the other day, is start a nursery rhyme and then insert the wrong word into it, so that their prefrontal cortex has to go, hey, hang on a second, that was the wrong word there. Or ask them the color of some of the objects in the room, or ask them to find a blue object somewhere in the room. Anything like this that requires their rational brain to do some work to kind of wake itself back up and start moving again and driving their body again, will have an almost shocking effect on their tantrum. I have seen my son go from, full-blown tears, screaming, kicking, fighting, biting, screaming, all of that, to completely docile by simply asking him What am I doing right now? Am I touching my nose right now? Oh, I'm touching my ear. Where's your ear? These types of executive functioning tasks are extremely helpful tools because essentially what they do is that they force your child, who is naturally inquisitive. They want to figure out what's going on. They're like, oh, why is dad doing this weird thing with his ear? It forces them to use their prefrontal cortex or their neural cortex in a way to figure out what's happening. And then when you start giving them tasks, find a blue object, touch your nose, jump up and down, all of these different things, when you start giving them instructions that they have to follow, then literally their brain, their prefrontal cortex, just takes back control from their limbic system. It takes back control from their amygdala. Their amygdala overrode their prefrontal cortex to get them into that tantrum state, and then you just made their prefrontal cortex override their amygdala to take them back out of it. And it's incredibly helpful, it's incredibly effective, but like I said, it doesn't always work. And part of the reason why it stops working is not because like in certain circumstances it doesn't work. It's because if you do it so much that it becomes not strange and novel to your kid's brain, if they're like, hey, every time I start to freak out, then my dad says, touch your nose, then that just becomes enveloped into the tantrum sympathetic nerve cycle for them. As soon as it becomes regular and expected, then you will have to change what types of tasks. And maybe you were asking them to do visual tasks before, find blue items. Now you're gonna have to ask them what they hear. You're gonna have to like engage different things. And so that's why I say to parents, you know what? You don't always need to use this. If your kid's melting down in your kitchen while you're cooking dinner, like don't hijack their brain. Like that you don't have to in that moment. You can work with them and work them through. Now, if they're starting to hyperventilate and get out of control and lose it and you wanna help them, maybe you still do it, but by and large, you wanna withhold this for those moments where you need it. And if you do that well, then how this is gonna work is that you're gonna see like, oh my gosh, my kid just totally, and it gets, you know, you wanna do it again because it's so inspiring. It's just like, wow, I can't believe that just worked. This guy on the internet told me that I should tell my kid to touch his nose and find something green in the room, or ask him what color my shirt is and maybe offer him, oh, my shirt's red, right? And then, oh no, it's actually blue, Dad. Like, I cannot believe how effective that was. Well, it was effective this time. Will it be effective next time? Probably. Will it be effective the 10th time? Probably not. So use that sparingly. And then here's the essential part. And this is where people were kind of disagreeing with me. Very intelligent, smart, you know, people who understand evidence-based psychology and parenting were disagreeing with me on my TikTok videos because, you know, I had a limited time, only had a minute there to kind of explain how to do that. And I didn't say at the end of it that you need to circle back around to the listening and observing immediately after your kid's calm. So when you see their prefrontal cortex take back control of their brain and then start to kind of do these tasks, oh, that's blue and your shirt's blue and here's my nose and I'm jumping up and down, or whatever, they do all those things. As soon as they're calm enough, you need to redirect them back to the thing that made them upset. Hey, I saw that you were really upset when you bumped your knee. I saw that you were really upset when you know, that person got the last cookie that you were waiting in line for. Whatever it is, when that happens, your kid will remember that and their limbic system will try and grab back control. But here's the thing, now you're ready for that, you know that it's gonna trigger them, and you're already in the position that we talked about in the beginning of step 2, where you're lower than them and you're quiet and you're, you know, physically soothing them and doing all these things. You're connecting with them on an emotional level. I can see how this is hurting you. And their amygdala can't fly out of control as easily or as readily as if, you know, this happens and you're not ready for it. So that's why you use rule 3, hijacking their brain. That's how you do it. Now just understand that with great power comes great responsibility, right? Like, don't overuse this, otherwise it's gonna become ineffective. And then you're not gonna have it for those moments where, hey, you know what, I really do. I mean, my kid's really escalated right now and it's not safe. They're throwing their head around and they're near a swimming pool and what if they fall in or whatever. So keep that in your back pocket. Use it when you need it, but now you know how to do it. Let's move on to rule 4.